morning, students. Today I will discuss the next chapter, that is chapter 3, the economic reforms since 1991. The 1991 on Indian economic economic reforms the economic reforms since 1991. The 1991 before 1991 our economy was a restrictive economy. Various restrictions was imposed by the government in case of industrial sector, in case of the agricultural sector, as well as in case of the financial sector. See, before the 1991 our economic growth has declined more and more, and in such a backdrop the economic growth is coming. That means the economic financial situation of our country is not sound. So in that situation, to revive from the economic slowdown, the government of India during that period, Indian Finance Minister Dr. Manmohan Singh initiated or introduced the new economic policy, or we also it is considered as LPG policy, that is liberalization, privatization and globalization. And moreover, to know that our economy introduced after independence, the government of India introduced the mixed economic pattern. The Bharatbarbhat ki introduced mixed economic approach introduced for the economic development, and public sector was the dominant in our economy. The public sector basic importance so that that is the main instrument of economic development. The government considers the public sector is the key instrument for the economic development of our country. And moreover, in that period, the industries which are critically important, as like as coal, mining, roadways, all these are petroleum, all these are retained in the hand of the government. And system of licensing, during that period, the government of India introduced the licensing policy to control the industrial sector as well as the financial sector, and it adversely affected the economic growth of our country. Thus, there was a need to review the economic policies followed by our country, and during the first decades of the development with a view to improve the growth and efficiency, what happened? There was a need to review the economic policies followed during the first 3 decades of development with a view to improve the growth and efficiency. After independence, the economic policy review. So in 1991, the licensing quota that is replaced by whatever the licensing policy as well as the quota policy that was replaced by the LPG, or the liberalization, privatization and globalization. Then why there is a need for new economic policy? New economic policy. যে কি কারণে নিউ ইকোনমিক পলিসি সেই সময়ছোৱাত ইন্ট্ৰডিউস কৰিব লগা হৈছিল? That the need for the new economic policy arises, number 1, due to the point number 1, the key karone new economic policy introduce korbo laga hoisile. What is the need for a new economic policy? That is the growing fiscal deficit. The growing fiscal deficit. During that period, the fiscal deficit has increases day by day. The fiscal deficit means what? The estimated receipts of the government is less than estimated expenditure. So that the estimated receipt is less than estimated expenditure. যেটাক আমি কি বুলি কম ফিস্কেল ডেফিসিট বুলি কম যে গভৰ্ণমেণ্টৰ যে এষ্টিমেটেড ৰিচিপ্টছ কিমান টকা পইচা আহিব বা ইম্প'জিং টেক্স ফিজ এজ ৱেল এজ গ্ৰাণ্টছ অল দিজ এটাৰ পৰা কিমান টকা আহিব সেইটো যদি কম হয় খৰচতকৈ গভৰ্ণমেণ্টৰ খৰচতকৈ তাক আমি কি বুলি কম ফিস্কেল ডেফিসিট বুলি কম and prior to 1991 the fiscal deficit has rising year by year the প্ৰত্যেক বছৰে কি হৈ গৈছিলে fiscal deficit has been increases before 1991 the in the figure we see that we find that the fiscal deficit which was 5.4% of the GDP in 1980-81 and it has increases to 8.4% in 1991 that means day by day the fiscal deficit of the government of India has been increases. Then another one, another need for the introduction of new economic policies that unfavorable balance of payment. So unfavorable balance of payment. The balance of payment means that is a systematic record of income and expenditure. That is the systematic record of all economic transactions between the resident of a country and rest of the world. The systematic record of all economic transactions take place in between resident of a country and rest of the world that we consider it as a balance of payment. In that period, the new economic policy introduced during the time of 1991. The 1990 and 1991 during that period, the balance of payment become unfavorable. That means what? The balance of payment the prior to 1991, there was a slow growth of our economy. I mean, before 1991, the economic growth of our country is very much less. So growth that means income of our country is less. That means economic growth like a national income and moreover that there is a sharp rise in imports. Imports and imports there is a less export, then it's become an unfavorable balance of payment. Import payment from the export earning. When there is a less export in comparison to import, then the balance of payment become unfavorable. Then another point that is the low foreign exchange reserve. Third point is that low foreign exchange reserve. The excess of imports over export. Excess of imports over export. Exporter import besi so that there is a low foreign exchange reserve. Because import the foreign exchange reserve has decreases. Or here it is difficult for the government to make a payment for a fortnight. There are fortnight payment or foreign exchange reserve. Then fourth point, for the need of the new economic policy, introduction of the new economic policy, that is the rising prices. So price rise the general price level has increases. The fourth point is the rising prices. The price has been increases due to financing of huge fiscal deficit. That the government has to be faced the huge financial deficit, that means fiscal deficit has increases or growing fiscal deficit was found during that period. What had happened due to increasing the fiscal deficit? The the general price level has increases, and the continuous rise is in the price level since after the introduction of the planned economic development. You know that in 1951, for the first time, the government of India introduced the for a 5-year plan. So since then, it became a quite severe situation till 1980. The plan development strategy was day by day, the growing fiscal deficit arising, and ultimately, due to increasing the fiscal deficit, it increases the general price level in our country. So this financial crisis forced the Indian government to borrow money from international banks such as World Bank as well as the International Monetary Fund. See, the economic crisis overcome the government of India have to approach the international financial institution like World Bank as well as the International Monetary Fund. So they are agreed to provide financial assistance to our country on the conditions that the government of India has to take new economic policy or whatever the instruction given by the International Monetary Fund or World Bank, that we consider here it as a new economic policy. যে ইহঁতে পইচা দিব কিন্তু কেনেকৈ ধৰণে পইচা দিব যে পইচা দিবলৈ হ'লে সিহঁতৰ ইনষ্ট্ৰাকশ্যন মতে কি কৰিব লাগিব কাম কৰিব লাগিব সিহঁতৰ ইনষ্ট্ৰাকশ্যন মতে কি কৰিব লাগিব ভাৰতবৰ্ষৰ অৰ্থনীতিত চেঞ্জেছ আনিব লাগিব so that instruction here then Manmohan Singh is considered it as a new economic policy or LPG, liberalization, privatization and globalization. Then now come to the liberalization. What is the meaning of liberalization here? See, so liberalization, the first, in general, you consider that the liberalization refers to liberating the trade and industry from unwanted restriction. Before 1991, there was various restrictions in case of trade. The import government of permission, but there is a quota restriction. কিছুমান বস্তু লিমিটেড হিচাপত কি কৰিব পাৰিছিল ইম্পোৰ্ট কৰিব পাৰিছিল or to introduce or to set up an industry, then they have to obtain a license from the government. All these restrictions has abolished by the government of India, that we consider it as a liberalization. যিবিলাক restriction আছিলে যিবিলাক বাধা আৰোপ আছিলে সেইবিলাক যেতিয়া আঁতৰাই দিছিলে লাইসেন্সিং ব্যৱস্থা আঁতৰাই দিছিলে বা যি ধৰণৰ ইম্পোৰ্ট কৰিবলৈ যাওঁতে বাধা আৰোপ কৰা হৈছিলে যে নিৰ্দিষ্ট পৰিমাণৰ দ্ৰব্য সামগ্ৰীতকৈ যাতে বেছি পৰিমাণৰ দ্ৰব্য সামগ্ৰী আমদানি কৰিব নোৱাৰে ইম্পোৰ্ট কৰিব নোৱাৰে সেই ৰেষ্ট্ৰিকশ্যনবিলাক আঁতৰাই দিয়া প্ৰক্ৰিয়াটোকে এভলিউচিং দি অল ৰেষ্ট্ৰিকশ্যন here we consider it as a liberalization policy. The liberalization defined as the reduced rule and control of the government in various economic activities. The various economic activities of government or rule bilak jete naike kori dibo ba government or rule to jete reduce kori dibo, that we consider it as a liberalization. Secondly, the liberalization is defined as the reduce rule and control of government in economic activities. Secondly, what happened in case after introduction of liberalization? The liberalization helped the expansion of the private sector to enlarge capacity under new areas and take up production of new products. The liberalization it enhances the public sector in our economy. It helped the private sector to produce more output or new type of new pattern of output. And moreover, the public sector undertaking has improved their performance. They are also the public sector undertaking. Like PSU asile. The liberalization encouraged the private sector to produce more and more output as well as the new pattern of product. যে নতুন ধৰণৰ দ্ৰব্য সামগ্ৰী সৃষ্টি কৰিবৰ কাৰণে পাব্লিক সেক্টৰ প্ৰাইভেট সেক্টৰ উৎসাহ যোগাইছে and moreover during that period after liberalization the public sector undertaking যিবিলাক PSU আছিলে that also improved and moreover to finance the government deficit during that period সেই সময়ছোৱাত গভৰ্ণমেণ্টৰ ডেফিচিট বিলাক ফিনান্স কৰিবৰ কাৰণে the government undertake the disinvestment policy. So disinvestment means what? Whenever the government sell the equity of a public sector enterprise in the market, that we consider it as a disinvestment policy. As an example, nowadays you can consider that the disinvestment is in case of Naga paper mill, Bakasar paper mill. These are the initiative under the disinvestment policy of the government. And moreover, in the context of Indian economy, thirdly, in the context of Indian economy, liberalization emphasized the autonomy of the entrepreneur. The liberalization is কি কৰিব খুজিছিলে যিবিলাক এন্টাৰপ্ৰেনিয়ৰ আছিলে যিবিলাক উদ্যোগ প্ৰতিষ্ঠান আছিলে যে সিহঁতক কি প্ৰভাইড কৰিব খুজিছিলে অটোনমি দিব খুজিছিলে বা স্বতন্ত্ৰতা প্ৰদান কৰিব খুজিছিলে in case of production decision. And moreover, the license are provided on an entrepreneur without any hassle. The liberalization policy industrial introduced কৰাৰ লগে লগে কি হৈছিল আগতে এখন লাইসেন্স পাবলৈ যি ধৰণে যিমানখিনি পেপাৰ কৰিব লাগিছিল বা যি ধৰণৰ প্ৰচিডিউৰ যাব লগা হৈছিল that is becomes easy after introduction of liberalization policy. The liberalization policy introduced কৰাৰ লগে লগে কি কৰিব খুজিছিলে যে লাইসেন্স যাতে সহজে পায় বা লাইসেন্স পোৱা ব্যৱস্থাটো কি কৰিছিলে সহজ কৰি তুলিছিলে and liberalization of trade will open up the opportunity of export goods. The liberalization introduced কৰাৰ লগে লগে it helps in liberalizing the trade. The আগতে যি ধৰণৰ এক্সপৰ্ট ইম্পৰ্টৰ ক্ষেত্ৰত যিবিলাক ৰেষ্ট্ৰিকশ্যন আছিলে কোটাৰ ৰেষ্ট্ৰিকশ্যন আছিলে all these are এইবিলাক কি কৰিছিলে এবলিউচ হৈ গৈছিলে so the trades become easier. It's become an opportunity for our country for the exporter and importer and increasing the pressure in domestic industry cope with the competition from import. Our কি কৰিছিলে the liberalization কৰি দিয়া লগে those of the domestic industry they have to compete with the foreign industry. Thank you.